Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup, where D-Days and crew are going to ruminate on the great and spacious beehive. This is October 8th, 2023, episode 80 coming at you. We've got more general conference reactions, more Tim Ballard updates, and much, much more. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm at MormonNewsRoundup.org. You can send me an email to collab@MormonNewsRoundup.org. I'd like to invite onto my program my incredible co-host here, Jane Christie. Jane, how's it going?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Now, what is your, who are you, Jane? What's your 1 minute Mormon story?
1 minute Mormon story. Mormon convert, married to a non-member. My kids have left the church. My husband still thinks it's completely nuts, and I am in a really nuanced place. I have a special needs son, and church just couldn't be made to work for him. So I'm here. All my friends left the church, and so what I wanted to do was to talk about some of the reasons why they were leaving the church, talk about some of the pain that they were experiencing, the kind of things that we would talk about in the foyer that were wonderful and exciting. So I started 21st Century Saints with some friends in a bid to have those conversations, and all this time later, they still left. That's the end of the story. And so we still have the podcast, which is really fun.
Let's talk about that. 21st Century Saints there. You got a number of videos on there. What is 21st Century Saints all about? What do you do at 21st Century Saints?
We wanted to talk about what it's like to be a Latter-day Saint in the 21st century, that we don't have to fall back on 19th century patterns of doing things and patterns of thought that are extremely unhealthy. We wanted to talk about the things that we are actually experiencing today. Gender issues, abuse, things in the news, stuff that you couldn't talk about in class, or if you did, everyone would leave, or in the exhaustion of always having to be that person in the ward that I think most of the audience have probably been, the person who sort of puts their hand up and has to say, well, but I kind of think this, and introduce those conversations gently. So we wanted to try and be a place where we could have tough conversations, focusing on the lived experience, but here in the United Kingdom, with this perspective that wasn't in the bubble, but it's also kind of in the bubble. There is not so much of a membership here who know what's happening in Mormondom, if that makes sense. It's to be a Latter-day Saint here, you have to really, really want to be a Latter-day Saint. So there's a lot of stuff that people just aren't maybe aware of. So those are when someone comes across it, and it becomes really, really tough to deal with. Who do you talk to? All your friends are leaving. So I wanted to have a conversation that kind of holds the door open, that if you want to leave the church, this is a place where you can have those tough figuring out moments. And if you want to stay, that, we're holding the door open, that there is a place for you to stay, and also have these beliefs that the church in a lot of ways is problematic and unhealthy. And so here is what 21st century Latter-day Saints look like.
Yeah. Now, you're also a member of the Brit Vengers. That's not necessarily a podcast. That's just kind of an association. What is the Brit Vengers all about?
Me and my podcasting buddies in the UK really need a lot of affirmation and attention. We have very big egos, so we needed a grand title.
Okay.
It was kind of lovingly dubbed by some of the fans way back when we were first all kind of hanging out together. So we all met through Sunstone UK, which is coming up just shortly. I think maybe we can talk a little bit about that shortly. But we met one Sunstone, and we just kept sort of bouncing ideas off each other. Peter has embarked on this love affair with my dear friend Davis. Peter Bleakley,
right? Peter, okay.
now adores you. And
he needs better standards then, maybe.
well, let's face it, he hangs around with us. He is he's one of the Brit Vengers. He does his multi-hour epic podcast. We have Nemo the Mormon. Priesthood Dispatches was in this space. He's taken a little bit of a rest from living his best non-Mormon life. And so, yeah, we all kind of, and the guys from Sunstone UK are also part of the Brit Vengers. And so, yeah, the UK podcasters, we disagree all the time. We, push back and we support, and it's such a healthy space. And yeah, we're all sort of pitching in and helping with whatever everyone else is doing. Yeah, so the guys have been incredible.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can't recommend you anymore. Your podcast is very, very important. What you guys have accomplished is really, really amazing. And that does bring us to our Mormon joke of the week, which I believe that you have for us, Jane.
Oh, so I mean, not to feel on the spot or anything here, but Scottish people in comedy, we get presented comedy. We don't show up and do it ourselves, unless we're Billy Connolly, and let's face it. But no, this is a true story, and it's such a Mormon cliche that to be able to tell you that this actually happened just brings me utter joy. So my youngest kid is now with us permanently, and when they first came to live with our family, they are non-binary. They are this just wonderful human being, but at 14 years old, they've come in, and we're having these conversations around: do you want to join in the Young Women's Program online? Do you want to? Because I'm one of the leadership in the ward at the moment, so I'm having to explain Mormonism from the get-go, from the ground up, and it's it's sweet, it's nice, it's not doesn't reflect their gender in any way at all. And we would sort of change some of the language around it to instead of we are daughters of heavenly parents, we are children of heavenly parents. I would just go ahead and do that. But after one particular class, and keep in mind, this kid does not know our family that well or our religion that well, and my kid is like, can I just ask, why do you guys keep talking about the erotic priesthood?
Oh, no. Okay.
No, we've all heard it, but it happened. That is what we say, and that's what the kids are hearing. So, yeah. So,
that could be the Scottish accent coming through.
Maybe, yeah. So if you do need subtitles, just pop them
hopefully we'll avoid the explicit rating language for that joke. We've had a couple of raunchy jokes on there, but that one's good. But if you look at my background here, Jane, look, I've got the Scottish Highlands in the background here. So that's...
Oh, you are fancy today.
Yeah, nice. Very nice. Now, I also have a joke of the week here, which I want to share with you. And here in the United States, we had a national test here a couple of days ago where they sent a text message out to every single person in the United States to check the national alert system here. And somebody made a joke and said, this is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. The purpose of this test is to let you know that Tim Ballard has been excommunicated. That's just a joke because, everybody got a text message, but of course it wasn't related to Tim Ballard. But Tim Ballard, it's all the rage around here. It's absolutely incredible, the traction that Tim Ballard is getting, and what is happening with his story is just incredible. Now, in particular here, Lynn Packard, he has been doing a series, and this is a bona fide real journalist. This isn't conspiracies. This isn't just some guy on Twitter. Lynn Packard has been an established journalist for many, many years here. And his OUR report number 32, which actually I just watched this morning, is absolutely incredible. And he comes to the conclusion that Tim and Russel Ballard are lying about their financial dealings in this report. This is a must watch if you're interested in the Tim Ballard, which I know maybe over across the pond, this isn't as big of a deal for you guys, but over here in the United States, it's a big deal. And this is basically one of the sum ups here, Jane, here. Vice reported on witness interviews, quote, this goes through the entire, it goes through all of the evidence of it, that, yeah, these guys were thick as thieves. They were extremely closely related, which of course begs a lot of questions. If you have a long-term relationship and you're propping up as Russel Ballard had a long-term relationship with Tim Ballard, and they engaged in shady financial dealings and a lot of misconduct. How was he not aware of the issues that were involved with it, considering the fact that Russel Ballard also propped Tim Ballard up in devotionals at BYU? Presumably, he prayed about the content of those devotionals. It's just one gigantic mess over here, and it's getting more and more shoes are dropping over here. Any thoughts on this latest revelations here, Jane?
So I guess I more have some questions than thoughts. There is something that I was going to share, but just to check. So yeah, here. There isn't a lot about this. It's bizarre because the movie has come out in the cinemas and it's kind of flying more under the radar here. So people are picking it up word of mouth and generally loving it, which I have a huge problem with. But so what I wondered is, in the actual Mormon bubble, are people super aware of this, or is this just something that it's being reported and it seems like anti-Mormon propaganda? How are people? That alert, would that have caused more of an impact if it had have been his name that was mentioned? I'm just curious about how it's sort of being approached. Anti-Mormon stuff.
It seems like a lot of people are aware of it. It's got a lot of traction because we had the Sound of Freedom movie, which took place last summer, and that was a big box office hit. So not just Mormons, but a lot of non-Mormons went to go see this movie. It seems like that there's a big awareness of it. And from Lynn Packard's latest YouTube video, let me just play one, show you one other thing that came out of this. This is what he is claiming. Again, this is all backed up with solid journalism, in my opinion. Russel Ballard wind-up. Russel Ballard's involvement with Tim Ballard's questionable financial ventures follows a list of his association with business failures and frauds. So his lying about a business tie with Tim Ballard is no surprise given his past conduct. It's also no surprise that the LDS Church spokesman attempts to paint Russel Ballard as Tim Ballard's victim rather than as Tim's accomplice. So, I mean, it's really thick as thieves over here, and more shoes are dropping. It's just incredible, the revelations that are coming out over this.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. 21st century saints have had a huge focus on safeguarding, which is rather than just being, the focus is very often on child protection and issues relating to abuse, really focused on kids. Safeguarding is about keeping everyone safe. So elder abuse, our older people having conversations around selling their homes to go pay missions and their tithing and those types of pressures, about vulnerable adults at any stage. And so it's quite a wide group. It's much easier for a movie like Tim's and for work like Tim's. It's been flagged for years that this doesn't help. What it does is tells you that abuse and trafficking is something that happens over here. We're really aware that Operation Underground Railroad tends to deflect from the actual problems. Governments are working with very, very closely with organizations to deal with trafficking. Often it's very closely related to some faith groups, and the strategies on this are just so wide. And then whenever someone is coming in and almost sort of creating this, problem that's almost feeding itself, creating a market even for victims, this is not what we want to be happening. The issue of trafficking is very, very important. It's best that happens through the proper channels rather than well-meaning charities who are going in there and trying to save the day. When it comes to abuse, our focus really needs to be on creating a language around how we talk about it, a language about how we can make sure that people aren't vulnerable to being trafficked. We think about missionaries and those conversations where actually we put a lot of pressure for people to cross borders and share whatever message the organization is putting forward. So we want to make sure that those kinds of conversations, that you have a language to say no, that passports aren't retained by mission presidents, those kinds of things. But more importantly than that, the real threat with safeguarding is people within your immediate community and family, and especially when there's a church community and those links are very, very blurred. So we're very worried anyway about Operation Railroad and the focus that is actually, in our opinion, taking away from the good work that is being done by governments and organizations who are best placed to do that. Now, the Mormon Church is an organization that, as much as it is this huge corporate machine, is actually in a lot of ways extremely vulnerable and extremely naive. It's anyone who's seen the Book of Mormon musical and how Mormonism is presented, Latter-day Saint Mormonism is presented with a really well-meaning, sweet bunch of naive people and that close ranks. This is what I think is happening here. I think the church has been extremely vulnerable to the messaging of Tim Ballard. It's a reassuring thing that we don't need to think about the issues that we can actually do something about right now by creating a language, by strengthening policies, wonderful policies, thanks to some of the work that have been done recently in the UK that we've been able to be part of, has brought in some of these fantastic policies, which include background checks, which include training and callings for volunteers. It's fantastic. Those are the types of things we need to be looking at. What can we do better? Not where can we go to solve a problem that actually could be perpetuating and creating a problem. So yeah, I think the church has been very vulnerable to that message.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me play another clip for you, because it's not just with the OUR. The allegations are is that very few children were actually rescued. Some of these were being done by psychics. They were failed missions. And like you said, it could have been doing more harm than actual good. And it's not just that the children who are in these situations, who we also have credible allegations that the people who were supposed to be rescuing the children were actually abusing the children. We also have credible information of that. It's also that the women that Tim Ballard took with him on these missions were sexually groomed. And I want to get your reaction to this. He posted this about, he calls it the couples ruse. And unfortunately, he's wearing a UK t-shirt there, Jane. I'm sure that you're not appreciative of that. But let's listen to this.
Guys, I want to tell you about a very important undercover tactic that we use that involves female operators. Based on the allegations that are flying around and the questions being asked, we've decided to tell you these tactics. While I do so, I'm going to pay homage, respect, love, and gratitude for these female operators who serve such an important role in rescue operations. You need to understand that children don't just fall out of the sky. They don't fall into your desk. It's a very proactive work. So if I'm a man or one of my operators approached by a trafficker trying to put a child to service on that person, or a sex worker, and that man, that operator doesn't partake of what's being offered, they lose credibility. And so we came up with a concept that we call the couples ruse, or the couples tactic, where you go in together, pretending to be a husband or wife or boyfriend, girlfriend. Now you go in, and one of you could pretend that, yes, I want to partake in this sex act with this woman or this child, but I can't because my girlfriend won't let me, but maybe we can do it later. So is that cool? Like, let's keep talking, and she'll warm up to it eventually. But the bottom line is we block for each other. So the trafficker sees the situation, recognizes that I have every excuse not to partake. Hundreds, maybe thousands of children have been rescued using this amazing tactic. As I've had these talks over the last several weeks with these amazing, heroic female operators, they want their voices heard. They want you to know what it's been like for them working with me and other operators.
Now, the thing about this, Jane, is that he pressured the women who were with him. He pressured them, according to the allegations, to take showers with him and also sleep in the same bed. So what's your reaction to all this? Again,
is this vulnerability. And this, I think, highlights the problem fundamentally with the whole approach of Operation Underground Railroad. So first of all, if women want to speak, if they are really desperate to tell you what they are really experiencing, they can do that for themselves. I mean, that's just fundamentally, it doesn't need you to explain what their experience is. Thank you very much, Tim. And what we're seeing is they're telling you that these experiences have been coercive and controlling and putting them in situations that they don't want to be in. And it's wonderful if we've had women who have had a fantastic, empowering experience. The way we would speak about that is women operatives that, you're speaking about them as props. You're speaking about them as someone who lets the man then go on and do the work that they're trying to do in a really problematic model in the first place. This is the thing that happens when you're trying to shine a light on these hundreds, thousands of nameless children that it's in dispute how many of these children actually really exist. When the problem is over there, when the language of abuse is really inflammatory, and it looks very dramatic and heroic and shady. When all of the adrenaline is pumping, it leaves you vulnerable in the same way as moviegoers are vulnerable to that message. This isn't just a problem, for these children who actually are being trafficked, and this is diverting attention away from where it needs to go. This also means that people who are signing up to be involved and people who are signing up to give you money are vulnerable in that they are sort of seeing that a problem is being solved, and we don't realize that we are being manipulated and groomed into actions that we wouldn't normally have taken, or we're vulnerable to messaging that can, we don't ask as many questions because the problems are all being solved. The solutions are all being handed to you. They are presenting themselves as the experts. They have all of the answers. They've been in this space for so many years, and they have all of this evidence, which actually we haven't been presented with very much evidence at all. But what it means is if I go and watch this movie, I am in a position where I can think, okay, I can donate. I have been asked to raise awareness and tell people about the movie, make a donation, whatever that would look like, specifically to this organization and not any other. If there is a situation in my home where there is a vulnerability, that's where my focus really needs to be. I need to be focusing on the language of abuse, the patterns of predatory behavior that we see, that actually people who want access to children are creative. They tend to look at these types of vulnerabilities. It's like a moth to a flame. When we have these trusting relationships, those are the things that can make us really, really vulnerable. When people want access to children, it's not someone else generally from very far away. It's people who can easily access a child, and that tends to be in families and church communities. What we see with Tim Ballard in a lot of ways is what we see with the allegations that have been quite high profile about abuse within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that is when church leaders, any church leader, any religious person who has authority, when we are overly pedestalizing them, when they're in positions of authority, it can lead to this view that they can act with impunity. And Tim Ballard seems to be very, very reluctant to share accountability and transparency. That, you know, what are your actual methods? What evidences are you using? And now you have all of these complaints from people who have volunteered to support. None of this surprises me. He's a very dangerous person for a lot of reasons, and people have been saying this for years. What we're seeing is a culmination of someone who was empowered to act, and worse, empowered to act under the banner of Jesus Christ. You're using his name and to shore up your reputation. This is unacceptable. So yeah, I hope all power to the women who are coming forward, and the whistleblowers who are coming forward to talk about what they're actually experiencing.
Yeah, now we are going to post all of the information through the week. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're on TikTok. So we release every one of our Mormon News Roundup episodes live every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. But through the week, you can follow the Tim Ballard scandal and what's going to take place on that. And we're going to keep our eye out on that. We got a couple of other articles to get through this week as well here. And this one is big here, Jane. This was released from the Deseret News here by Tad Welch on October 5th, 2023. Various faith groups support the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Huntsman tithing appeal. Quote, the Supreme Court has consistently refused to allow courts to hide theological elephants in secular households, 10 religions say, in friend of the court brief. So the 10 religions here that we're looking at, this was a brief from Jewish, Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Seventh-day Adventist denominations, and a few other organizations. They said that the August ruling in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals violates the First Amendment and threatens all denominations, which, quote, now risk a deluge of dubious lawsuits over their donated tithing funds. So if I could just give a quick summary of the Huntsman tithing lawsuit. He filed the lawsuit in California, I believe it was in 2017. He wanted a refund of his tithing because he said that he gave his tithing under the auspice that his tithing was being used for humanitarian purposes. But it appears in his original lawsuit, he said that it was used for City Creek Mall and the bailing out of an insurance company. Well, it was initially denied, and he appealed it to the district. He appealed it to the circuit level. The circuit level sent it back down to the district level and said that there is that he does have a leg to stand on because of certain statements from President Hinckley, specifically in 2003, which said that no tithing would be used for the City Creek Mall, but tithing was used for the City Creek Mall. Then the church appealed the church appealed the circuit court and said, we want the circuit court to take another look at this before it's sent back down to the district court. Now, a number of other religious organizations have filed friend of the court briefs with the LDS Church saying, we don't want people to ever be able to get their donations back either. Okay, so it's a big, giant mess. What's your thoughts about the James Huntsman lawsuit and all these religions lining up and saying, no, this is First Amendment. You can't get your tithing back. You can't get your donations back ever.
What is fascinating me is how people seem to, just because nothing has happened so far, seem to be quite disheartened because nothing has happened so far. Nothing's ever going to happen, and the church is this massive institution that it's never ever going to back down, and tithing money is never ever going to come back. I think we can see I think this is a watch this space situation, and I think it's much more broad than just the Huntsman case. I think since the financial misconduct around the church, I think a lot is going to be happening over the next few months and years. What the question that I keep hearing being asked is, does this really have a chance? And legally, what we keep hearing back there is, oh, it absolutely does. It really, really does. So I think this is part of a bigger picture, and I'm fascinated to see how it's going to unfold.
Yeah, it's specific to the claims around the City Creek Mall. It's not saying that all donations ever. It's not saying that all donations for all time can come back. It's specifically the donations prior to the City Creek Mall, where senior leaders of the church, presiding bishoprics, President Hinckley said that no tithing has been or would be used for the building of the City Creek Mall. And that has basically been proved from the circuit court. The circuit court has says that a reasonable juror can look at the statements by the church leaders and might have compelling doubts as to the veracity of those statements. Now the church has appealed it to go back to the circuit court. There's got friend of the court briefs. Obviously, other religions don't want people to be able to get their donations back. But this, in my opinion, is an apples and oranges comparison, because other religions are not engaged in the commercial ventures that the LDS Church is. Okay, when you give your donations to other churches, you have a much more, in my opinion, you generally have a better idea that it's going to be used for humanitarian purposes and not for purely commercial purposes. So just because the tithing could be sent back to James Huntsman for the City Creek Mall, in my opinion, that doesn't open up other religions to be getting donations back to those people, because their leaders never made statements saying that we wouldn't be using donations to fund for-profit ventures, because other religions generally don't engage in those type of things. Any last thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I just think it's completely so out of the it's just not something UK people tend to think about very much, unless, of course, you are Saint Peter Bleakley, who's really, really interested in these things, because we don't tend to equate the church, any church, with commercial ventures. We just sort of tend to have this sense that, yeah, there's something happening, some investments that will be happening, and that just makes good financial sense because the church are good stewards. And so when I think most people, most active Mormons here, and even a hell of a lot of ex-Mormons hear City Creek, the eyes tend to kind of glaze over a little bit, because that's a Utah thing, and it's interesting to watch from a distance, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot, except this is so fascinating. This is why Mormonism is just so interesting, because there is this blurring of the lines between what is the purposes of a church, what can a congregant reasonably expect to be done with their money, versus what would any other church think is normal behavior. So yeah, it's fascinating to watch, I guess, from a distance.
Yeah, we're going to keep our eye on that one for sure. And of course, Jane, we had General Conference that took place this last week, and we did cover it. Yeah,
yes, we did.
We covered it quite a bit here on last week, but of course, the memes and the reaction continue the fallout for the next for the next couple of days. And I got a couple I got several memes here. I'm big on memes here from the General Conference fallouts that I want to share with you. Tell me if these memes are any good. So let's start with this one. First of all, this is a parody account. And it says, after General Conference, I've been called to serve as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've been called to serve in the Temple Grounds Beautification Team, a special extension of the Relief Society, English speaking, though I'll pretend to learn some Spanish. The joke here is that because they announced 20 temples, they're going to have to start calling senior missionaries to do groundskeeping.
And they will do it with their whole hearts.
They certainly will.
It will be glorious.
Yeah, absolutely. The other things that really have come out here from the General Conference is President Nelson think celestial. Did you catch that, his final talk there where he talked about thinking celestial?
Oh, didn't we all? Yes.
Yeah. I've got a couple memes here. I got a couple memes to go along with that. You tell me if
Bring
these are any
them
good
on.
as well. Okay, so LDS Discussions tweeted this out. Joseph Smith asked teenage girls to, quote, think celestial, end quote, when he commanded them via God to marry and have sex with him as polygamous wives. Mormon polygamy was all about thinking celestial, and this is a coercive tactic to get people to do what they would otherwise never do. Is polygamy thinking celestial, Jane?
Yes, that's the unfortunate thing, is that oh my goodness, it just traumatizes everyone. Okay, first, what the hell is that grammar? I don't know why it makes my brain itchy, but for two words to cause such pain to my soul is just, I don't know. I think President Nelson needed something snappier than, what was it before? Keep an eternal perspective, or whatever his other buzzwords have been. I was guessing that this was a sort of a midnight, get the yellow legal pad out, Wendy, please leave the room, and we need to write down think Celestial and underline it and put stars next to it several hundred times. And that's the very fellow for me, and just no one's been able to talk him out of it. I would say big mistake, but maybe I am wrong, because it's clearly making a lot of merch and a lot of slogan, a lot of slogans are being placed on bumper stickers as we speak. So, hey, if it's good for the economy, maybe there's something to it.
It's definitely going viral, that's for sure. How about this one?
is.
How about this one? We got Joseph Smith with Helen Mar Kimball, who was 14 years old when he married her. It's okay, I'm thinking celestial. How about that for a meme? A scale of 1 to 10. How good is that one?
I need my smelling salts. That's how good it is. It's so good because it's true. Yes, because here's the thing about thinking celestial. Everything is fine if you just don't have to think about it, and it will all be okay in the afterlife. Women who have been going to church all of these years and are presented a celestial kingdom vision, which includes the lovely catchy phrase eternal increase, and no one really, what does that mean? Oh, it means we'll have lots of children and we can keep having children, and we don't really get into awful. So yeah, when we think celestial, we tend to think, oh no, that's not fun for me. That's not only not fun for me, but that is the opposite of what what heaven should look like. So yeah, think celestial when it means following a certain path, and just don't think about things too closely right now, because it doesn't matter. It'll all get fixed in the celestial kingdom. It's actually, we joke about it kind of because we have to, because it is so traumatic. And this is coming in the back of a lot of problematic things that were being said. We obviously know, again, because it's 21st century saints, we can't not talk about some aspect of safeguarding. But we know that the suicide rates for people hearing talks like this go through the roof, specifically our LGBTQ siblings out there. What is wonderful to behold is that you get spaces like this where in the comments and in the chats and in the community sort of discussions, we've been able to see how some of those effects to a certain extent can be, if not quite mitigated, there is some kind of affirmation and support overwhelmingly from people who are sort of in that space to be able to, that's what ministry should look like. But in these days since conference, as much as the Think Celestial stuff is coming out, and everyone loving what President Nelson said, because it's working for them, because it hasn't yet caused them personally any pain, so many people are looking and seeing that actually pain is being caused, and this is hurting my family, therefore it's hurting me. And these messages of support, and that's the one, I guess, that we want to focus on, is that that you are perfect, that you don't need to change, and that if there is anything crossing your mind that getting to the celestial kingdom is going to change your body in ways that actually you have been praying for, you are perfect as you are right now. And that's the message that needs to be emphasized. That's what thinking celestial should be.
Yeah, that's what it should be. But President Nelson, in his address, he talked about, if you don't pay tithing, if you don't walk the covenant path, if you don't do exactly what I say, when I say, how I say, then you're not going to be, he specifically said, you will not be with your family if you don't follow my rules and my way. And this is a meme here that says, think celestial with Russell M. Nelson, which shows the hand of God ripping a young child out of a mother's hands who's very distressed. And is this picture make you think celestial here, Jane?
Well, the words itself, it's the threat, not the, it's the punishment, it's the closed doors. This isn't an open invitation to everyone. And in that list that you just provided, one of the demographics of people who got mentioned was people who are addicted. They don't get to make it either. We've heard over the years so many church talks and things saying, what we don't do is tell people where we're going. That's not what we're about. We have no call or should be making any comment about that. And here President Nelson decides to break down, here's a list of people who are not going to make it. And when he mentions in the addiction category, whether that's and the addiction model that the church uses, I have a lot of problems with, as do many people. But one of those categories was people who are addicted to food. And, you know, the amount of people who have addictive issues as it relates to food, but it's not an addiction model. It's anorexia, it's bulimia, it's binge eating, it's self-harm using food. And it is so problematic. And, you know, amongst 21st century saints, you know, we have, you know, we have teens that we are very, very close with, that message, had they heard it, would have been extremely harmful, to the point that we would have had to potentially look at, you know, how they would be keeping them alive. It's a horrific message. And I think this is the thing. President Nelson may have had what he feels is an inspired little buzzword that comes up. The impact of your words, it is just so far reaching. And yeah, I think if you are the leader of a world religion and all you have to say is a couple of words to make millions of people, you know, who will act on those words immediately without question, you're going to have to give it a hell of a lot more thought than that, because I mean, we're literally talking about life and death here.
Yeah, and you talked about merchandise from the Think Celestial. There's been a lot of merchandise going around out there, and you know, this is tweeted out here by the Cultural Hall. Never miss an opportunity to hashtag Think Celestial. Available at the BYU bookstore and Deseret Book locations. You know, I'd buy that. I'd put that in my house. I don't know about you, Jane,
You would definitely. The Think Celestial phrase is yeah, that's where it needs to be, is down the toilet. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm with that one.
You know, the crazy thing about it is people are pointing out the similarities between a lot of other harmful leaders and the Think Celestial. See, Warren Jeffs, the FLDS leader who's currently in prison for underage marriages and sexual abuse of minor girls. You know, his big catchphrase was "Keep sweet, pray, and obey," which Keep Sweet and Think Celestial, those seem to have a lot in common, don't they?
I had not seen this until just this moment, and it is hitting me hard. It absolutely, and while they may sound, other than the fact it's two words, while they may sound quite different, that is exactly the effect that that I think they're going for. Because you just wait, everything will be all right. We don't need to rock the boat right now. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me give you a couple more here of ways to think celestial here, Jane. This is from Apostle Marky Peterson in 1954. He said, "If the Negro is faithful all his days, he can and will enter the celestial kingdom. He will go there as a servant, but he will get a celestial resurrection," end quote. And is that thinking celestial?
That well, apparently it is. Apparently. See, these are the moments when I think, you know what, like I'll mention that Nemo, that Peter, the things they say in the Brit Vengers that make me need to grab my heart pills or my smelling salts. And then I remember that it ain't nothing compared to the stuff that the church itself has said over the years. So I'm sorry, guys, that I've been hard on you. I see that and I think, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Couple more here for you, Jane. What gives people feelings of power? Is it money? Is it status? Or is it thinking celestial? That's a good question. I wonder. Or how about this one? Don't forget to think celestial. See, when you drink a Diet Coke, that's thinking celestial. But when you drink coffee or tea, that's thinking telestial. Is that accurate?
Bonus points to the Cultural Hall. I see what you did there. Think Telestial. Britain thanks you. Yes. Round of applause.
Yeah, we're going to have him on the podcast here in a couple of months. By the way, we've got him lined up. A couple more memes for you. Somebody fixed the Think Celestial. Instead of Think Celestial, how about just this, Jane? How about just think? How about instead of thinking celestial, just think? That seems like it's fixed.
Love this. Yes. I am keeping this one.
Okay, very nice. A couple more here for you. Since it is the church that is worth so much money, instead of think celestial, how about instead let's think investial? That's accurate.
Oh, you guys crack me up.
That's 100% accurate without question.
Yes,
absolutely. And since the church has been, accused of so much sexual abuse in the Boy Scouts and in many of its congregations, instead of think celestial, think molestial, because
you went there. You went there.
Look, I just pass the memes along. I don't make them, okay? So I'm not responsible for any of the content of this podcast. I didn't make the meme. I'm just passing it along, right? So that does bring us to, if you've watched this podcast before, you'll know that we have a Mormon News Roundup poll of the week that goes with every every one of our episodes, or almost every one of our episodes, Jane. And I want you to be the first listener out there to take our poll. And again, like I said, we release our episodes onto Apple Podcasts, onto Spotify, but we also release them live on YouTube every Sunday night at 9:30. And if you come into the live chat, you can interact with us there. Can you read what the poll is? The question for the poll of the week is here for October 8th, 2023.
I would love to. The question is, what's the best way to follow President Nelson's inspired advice to think, Celestial?
Okay, so we're going to give you 8 choices, Jane, and you'll be the first one to take it. So
Okay.
Answer number 1.
Oh,
can you read it out loud for our podcast?
I'm just shook. Number 1, hoard $300 billion.
Yeah, with approximately 120 billion in real estate assets and about 180 billion in Ensign Peak, hoarding 300 billion. I guess that's thinking celestial, but could have fooled me. Or how about number 2, Jane?
Number 2 is file amicus briefs to deny LGBTQ persons of rights.
Yeah, because the church engages in that frequently, and I guess that's thinking celestial too. Boy, thinking celestial isn't all it's cracked up to be. Now that I think more about it, Jane.
Yeah.
Or how about number 3?
3 is tell your bishop not to report child sex abuse. And
Yeah,
the
because-
little tagline we have is the Mormon
Yeah.
Church has been accused of using their sexual abuse hotline to quiet victims and stave off potential lawsuits.
You know, the more that I think about this one, the more that I don't think that's thinking celestial, but that seems to be what the church has been doing for decades. So I'm a little confused. Maybe that's not the best one. How about number 4?
4 is announce 1 billion in temples, but $0 in food kitchens, hospitals, and orphanages.
Yeah, in food pantries, hospitals, orphanages. I guess that thinking celestial by building these incredibly unmanned edifices to dot the world that'll only be open for a couple of days a week, a couple hours at a time, instead of fixing the human suffering that is taking place on this world at this time. I guess that's thinking celestial. Or how about number 5?
Number 5 is sue a tiny rustic U.S. Western town in order to force through a monstrous edifice.
Yeah, we're talking about Cody, Wyoming. I'm not sure if you followed that one, but yeah, the church has filed a number of lawsuits to get through these temples through because, when you put a very, very giant edifice into a very, very small town, there's going to be a lot of pushback, and the church has sued that town. I guess that's thinking celestial. I'm not sure. How about number 6?
6 is disavow another treasured LDS cultural term.
Yeah, I guess getting rid of the word Mormon is thinking celestial, right, Jane?
Oh, yeah, don't say Mormon. Yeah.
No, that's
No.
telestial. That's telestial stuff.
Telestial.
Absolutely. Almost outer darkness, actually. How about number 7?
Let's go shopping.
Yeah, this is the City Creek Mall here. And if you look at the 5th person to the right here, do you know who that is for 5th person to the right?
I can't see that.
Thomas Monson. Thomas Monson. When
is.
City Creek Mall was, the church, we know from the Huntsman Lawsuit that the church donated invested $1.4 billion into the City Creek Mall. And when it was the groundbreaking, when they cut the ribbon, Thomas Monson was there and they all shouted, "Let's go shopping." Is that thinking celestial? I guess so. The prophet's there. Not really sure. And finally is number 8.
8 is tell coffee drinkers that they are going to hell.
Yeah, that's thinking celestial. So you're the first one here. Cast your votes in the live chat at this time. And Jane, can you be the first person to take our poll? What is the best way to follow President Nelson's inspired advice to think celestial?
Well, I can't select option 1 because I don't have $300 to hoard, never mind 3 billion. So that isn't even an option. Yeah, my kid would punch me in the head if I denied them their LGBTQ rights. Solidarity. Telling our bishops not to report child sex abuse. Guys, no.
This is a tough poll. This is a tough poll.
We report. Announcing right. Okay. I say this at every opportunity. You'll get temples everywhere you want a temple. England get 3 temples. Do you know how many are in Scotland?
0.
0 many. Ireland and Wales. We don't get temples, even though the number of talks that we have had to sit through where y'all are talking about your ancestors and how utterly Scottish their experience was. And do you know what? Your ancestors are ready to start going full poltergeist on your ass unless you get a temple in Scotland. I feel like they're just toying with us now. So no.
Okay.
Saying.
All I can say, Jane, is it's very hard to think celestial on this poll, but you got to select one option. So give it your best shot.
Right.
There.
So Now we
And
have
we never
it.
said it was easy, Jane. We only said it would be worth it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm torn because coffee drinkers are indeed going to hell. I believe that with my whole soul because it's nasty. Not the principle, because it is nasty. But I say 7 because one,
Hey!
it means I would get to go to City Creek. But yeah, who doesn't love shopping? I'm with you, President Monson. Let's go shopping.
It's funny that you chose number 7 because I also chose number 7. I think that the best way to think Celestial is to let's go shopping without question. I'd like to do it with Thomas Monson. I'd like to go through,
Well, not now. Not right now.
Yeah. I would like to go through with any senior leader of the church
Yeah.
here. Couple more conference memes here for you because the memes, they just keep coming on here, and you tell me if this one is too offensive for you. If they did this, hey, this is Jesus Christ. He's at a general conference. This is AI generated here, Jane. So my dad needs more of your human money. Okay. Do you like AI art, or am I taking this too far?
I might need to lie down after this, and this is going to be a really great conversation with my bishop. I'm just going to blame all you guys. It's okay. It's fine. It's all of you guys.
No problem. Now, you mentioned earlier the talk about President Nelson. Let's get into that because he
Yes.
talked about any addiction, be it gaming, gambling, debt, drugs, alcohol, anger, pornography, sex, or even food, offends God. And it seemed like you took some issue with that, Jane. What's your reaction to his advice here?
Your anorexia, your bulimia, your any issues with binge eating, any issues that you've had with shame around food, your anorexia does not offend God. Your bulimia does not offend God. You do not offend God. If you have any of the above named mental health issues, and they are all mental health issues, and some are serious illnesses, many of them are serious illnesses, your serious illness does not offend God. You are perfect and you're human, and you've got this.
That's very inspiring, Counsel. A couple of other memes that went along with that. President Nelson says that that God is offended by the word Mormon and various addictions. However, I guess God approves of the church scheming to keep child sex abuse secret, not reporting it to the police, and leaving LDS kids in danger of leadership known pedophiles. Seems like what offends us seems to be backwards in these situations.
Is he though? Is he offended by the word Mormon?
That's a good question.
Is he though?
That's a good question. Your friend over at the Brit Vengers here, Nemo, he posted this about whether addiction actually does offend. What is the deal with addictions here? Let me play this for you.
It's true that
any addiction, be it gaming, gambling, debt, drugs, alcohol, anger, pornography, sex, or even food, offends God.
Then what do we do about this?
It ultimately is impossible for another person to offend you or to offend me. Indeed, believing that another person offended us is fundamentally false. In many instances, choosing to be offended is a symptom of a much deeper and more serious spiritual malady.
Is God choosing to be offended? Let me know what you think.
Yeah, so, can't a person decide whether they're going to be offended or not?
I am delighted that Elder Ballard's talk can be used against him for now and for all eternity. That is wonderful news. That is thinking celestial.
You mean Bednar, Elder Bednar's talk?
Oh, Elder Bednar's talk. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I was more kind of distracted because Nemo's pallor, that he has gotten so pale. He's our little one and we love him, but spending the entire weekend in a cupboard talking about conference, takes its toll. So he's, we need to get that kid a spray tan or something. Yeah. Love you, Nemo.
You mentioned earlier that, not every addiction, this is from floodlit.org, who does a lot of interesting work with highlighting sexual abuse. They said, not every addiction or compulsion is the direct result of wrongdoing. I mean, someone can have dysregulated stress eating or biological switches. Or, I want to give a story here of my own father. He had a horrible back accident. He ended up in the hospital, serious accident. And he was in a great deal of pain. And he ended up getting addicted to pain medications. I don't think that is a result of a flaw in his character or Satan or anything like that. Addictions are, it's not the boogeyman that President Nelson seems to be making them out as. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And, the opioid crisis came about, through a whole host of different circumstances. And people are vulnerable, and that's what leads to these situations. And I have OCD, which I can laugh about when it's not a big deal, but compulsions This is what I've learned about compulsions. I am not my thoughts. And going to church constantly to hear that every thought that I have might be offending God is something that we can take on board and we can believe, or we can choose that that isn't helpful or healthy for me, and so it's not useful. I'm gonna let that go, simply because thoughts happen to us. Everyone has thoughts. Some you hang on to and some you don't. I don't care who you are. I mean, it sounds like such a bizarre thing to talk about, but human beings, even in dream states, think about the most bizarre things. Some of those things are not healthy or appropriate or safe or any of those things. Everyone has thought about when a train is coming, when a bus is coming, what would happen if I just jumped out in front of it? Most people aren't completely distressed by the thought. Compulsions and obsessive thinking is when you can't let go of that thought and trying to remember that actually you are not that thought. The thought is a thing that happens and that you get to observe that is almost antithetical to church teachings. And yet I am here to, I guess, bear witness that it's true. So these really harmful messages that even things that you have no control over, yeah, it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't.
Yeah, and that's not the only thing that was controversial that President Nelson said. He also brought up this quote that was along with the thinking Telestial here. Then this has also gone viral. Can you read that for us, Jane?
Simply, it says, never take counsel of those who don't believe.
Yeah, and only seek guidance from the voices that you can trust. What's your reaction to saying that you should never seek counsel from people who don't believe? What's your thoughts on that?
I'm going to bring the thunder. Okay. This causes so many problems simply because we are creating an us and them attitude. Your goal may be to shore up faith, but what it actually did was created fears in families throughout the reach of your voice. In families, concerns continue to be raised, real pain that people are saying that this is just what my family need to hear to stop listening to me. It's already been tense. I've stepped away from the church, and this will drive a further wedge. And this is what they're experiencing in this week. The other thing that it does, not only to drive wedges between families, but also in couples. When you have therapy, unless it's an LDS approved therapist, which, let's face it, everyone doesn't either have access to or want or necessarily need. That's not always the best way forward. Those people may have completely contrary opinions, for example, with things like sex and pornography use, those types of things where we have to look outside our own views and opinions. I'm in a mixed faith marriage. This would mean that I have to literally put my church leaders' counsel above the wise advice of my husband. It asks us to make a choice. It asks us, first of all, to make a determination about where someone's faith is. It's almost conducting a mental worthiness interview before you even enter a conversation. Can I trust what you're going to say because you are a Mormon? Then what happens is, again, when there is excessive veneration of church leaders, it can lead to a belief that they can act with impunity. So when someone has that amount of trust placed in them, it is not a healthy dynamic to make those decisions just because they come from a position of faith. This is how, things like sleepovers within church communities, just because someone's a member of the church, they have a temple recommend, this means that they're trustworthy, and so your kids can spend time there. This also means that you prioritize the advice given by a church leader rather than someone else who is better informed. We also saw in that same talk, and this is what I found fascinating, was there was a moment where President Nelson had mentioned that his work colleagues had totally disagreed with him or had criticized some aspect of his work, and how he chuckled about that. The idea even that he could be wrong. And I envision perhaps his colleagues maybe saying, what, you don't believe in evolution? What? But that's crazy. You can't be a doctor and think that. And okay, maybe other people might think, and maybe it's not that, maybe it's just about a medical decision, but most normal people would think, okay, my work colleagues, my respected peers, if the thing that they're trying to communicate to me if my work peers have something that they're trying to communicate to me, maybe they have a point and maybe I should listen.
Yeah,
Their views might be worth taking on board.
And that's the thing. It says, well, Enos Envy, he tweeted this out. We're going to have him on the podcast too. He said, well, what about your non-member employer? What about your unbelieving dentist? How about your banker? How about your non-believing legal? How about your lawyer? How about your doctor? How about your PMO spouse? What about all of these people? You should never take counsel from anyone who doesn't believe. The problem is that 99.99% of the people on the planet are not Mormons. So, I mean, we're really reducing the amount of people that we can have any confidence in. It's like, well, we need to have a question and answer with someone before we engage in business with them. He said, never take any counsel, any. He didn't say religious counsel. He said, never take counsel. And the point that you brought up is very, very true here. It says, your people are in mixed faith marriages. Well, if he says never take counsel from those who don't believe, then you're not supposed to be able to engage in counsel with your husband if he's not a member or he's not a believer? It's an incredibly harmful message all the way around.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think just to bring that perfect situation, it means that the person that we would tend to go to in the LDS Church if we have a situation that we need counsel about would tend to be our bishop, potentially the home teachers, ministering people who are assigned to you, but in general it's going to be that. Now, if you imagine your elderly parents and they have saved for their retirement and they've just heard this, they've gotten through conference and we're hearing this reinforced message about how much the church really needs you to serve the mission. Despite everything that they've done in their entire life, they counsel with their bishop and they decide that they want to serve a senior mission. They don't have the funds because they are still going to have to pay for that themselves per person. And they talk to the bishop, who is naturally going to speak about what are your finances like, and can you afford to serve this mission, and what can we do around that? What's the situation? Well, we have a retirement fund that we also have our home, so we could look at putting those resources to fund the mission, and that is fantastic. Now, you speak to the unbelieving, perhaps, or even believing family members who feel genuine concern about that and who are advising their parents, we don't want you to sell your home, we don't want you to use your retirement fund. Also, the church really maybe should be paying because you have put your years of life into this, you've already served in whatever capacities. But now, who in President Nelson's equation gets listened to? I don't know how it works in the US, but here in the UK, if these elderly people are speaking to a financial advisor, or if they're going through the process of selling their home to do something like that, the family members are contacted because it's a safeguarding issue, because elderly people are particularly vulnerable to these types of messages and don't always sort of necessarily have a full view of what the consequences of those financial decisions might be. So who are you going to listen to? And it is not the family. And that's the horrific thing. There is a hell of a lot of power that you put into church leaders' hands when you tell them, and reinforcing to them too, church members can trust you. Your advice is going to be always, at all times, 100% that good.
Yeah, let me hit you with a couple of quick memes that go along with this, because
Let's
I thought
do
that
it.
this was the most harmful teaching in the entire conference. Never take counsel from those who don't believe in the dark side. It seems like I remember that from Star Wars. Or how about this one? In the LDS faith, we are not trained in how to tolerate diversity of thought. We are trained in how to conform. So if you never take counsel from those who don't believe, then you're never open to a diversity of opinion of someone who might disagree with you. Go ahead.
I mean, not just we don't get to experience that, we don't get to grow at all, because without that, without any discussion or pushback, then all we do is talk at people, which, I mean, I was chuckling with the 21st Century Saints gang just last night about this, because General Conference is not a conference. Okay, when you you have work or something that you're interested in, no, that is not a conference. That is, in the words of Ken in the Barbie movie, let me look uncomfortably into your eyes for 4.5 minutes while I sing at you. That's what that is. They are talking at you repeatedly. So this is maybe general lectures on faith or something like that. And there is no opportunity to think about other perspectives. There's no opportunity to push back against those other perspectives, even if you don't agree with them. There's no opportunity to add to what you don't already have revealed to you from other places. It's just congratulating yourself and rehearsing the same thing in different words over and over again.
When it comes to not taking counsel from those who don't believe, it kind of reminds me of that Brigham Young statement, that we used to have. The grand principle, remember, Brigham Young said the grand principle of Mormonism is to embrace truth. Let it come from whence it may. If there's any truth in the world, Brigham Young said, it belongs in the Church of Jesus, in Mormonism. But apparently we're going away from that because we only want to take truth from people who are in the church. It's kind of a 180.
I feel like is it switch? What's the game where, like, I feel like if we put church leadership quotes on a deck of cards and you laid one down, you can quite easily find another one that will trump that card and just flip the game. The Mormondom get on that, because there's constantly something that will contradict exactly what it is you're saying, and it's both exciting and completely depressing at the same time.
Yeah. LDS footnotes put this one out. Why shouldn't members of the church, especially my family, ask me why I don't believe the church is what it claims to be? And that's what it said. Never take counsel. So you should never even ask someone so someone doesn't go to church anymore. And according to President Nelson, you shouldn't even ask them why they don't go to church anymore. That's not something that you're supposed to even entertain, because you're not supposed to take counsel from those type of people.
I would hear. So church is still part of my life. We have all been at church and come back from church completely traumatized because it was just, a head mess. And I would get people telling me not to talk to my husband about things that happen at church. You can talk about teachings, but don't talk about any of those things. As if my husband has no ability to understand that there is a difference between people being pains in the ass and, the actual teachings of Jesus. He can see a difference. But also, I remember, and this is very, very recent, being completely devastated. As if I only ever go to church and come back in tears. It only happens like 90% of the time. And I was counselling with my Bishop and Relief Society president, and it was just awful. So I don't get to leave the house because I have a special needs son. So I'm here with him, and we don't have anyone to support with those needs. And I was just communicating like I would in any other demographic of my life. Just, this is really, really hard. I feel forgotten and left behind, and everyone sort of moves on without me. And remember COVID, when everyone was coming together, and I thought, oh, we're going to be able to have these experiences and you'll understand that you'll go back to normal and I'll still be here, but you'll understand a bit more now. And of course, life goes on and that doesn't happen. And I remember just talking about, like, this is really hard, and I'm not getting ministering visits, and they didn't, it was it was communicated to me that I didn't I shouldn't be feeling that, because that isn't, of course, that's not the case. What I was actually feeling wasn't what was happening, and it was horrible. It was so distressing. Now, seeing someone come out of church with that experience, and I'm talking about this one, it could be LGBTQ stuff, it could be so many things that are experienced. Isn't it normal and totally correct that our family members should be expressing concern about that? Why are you going? This isn't healthy. And that also we should be guided by that, because sometimes it isn't healthy. Maybe even most of the time, who knows? If it's your experience, all of the time. We have a kid that I cannot expose to church teachings, our youngest, who's trans, that we have a sort of view that if anything happens, if anyone says something, I'll speak to that person. Well, actually, but then the damage is done and it's too late. And every message they've had about their identity and who they are and their worthiness, that can all be reinforced again, despite healing through it, despite having utter knowledge and confidence that they are loved and who they are is complete and perfect. One throwaway comment can destroy all of that. Surely we should be able to think that if, the social workers who help place these children should be able to ask, is this a healthy place for this child to be? And we should be listening to that. So yeah, we have to listen to valuable content wherever we get it.
Yeah, and that's the whole issue. LDS Discussions, Mike over at LDS Discussions, who runs a very popular website over there, he tweeted this out. I just want to share this too. If the church had any confidence in its truth claims, they'd tell members to talk to those who leave because the church would have answers to the problems with church history and doctrines. They wouldn't worry about it. Instead, they tell members to shut out family and friends by using fear tactics. And imagine any other area of life when someone would tell you, never take counsel from those who don't believe in Microsoft, or who don't believe in Chevrolet cars, or don't believe in buying real estate from me. Only listen to me because I'm telling you the truth. Imagine, exporting this to any other area of your life. It doesn't make any sense.
Divas, how many times have we heard that, if you were buying a car, would you listen to that? This is not a car. That we can sell cars, we can get rid of cars. There is an agreement that if the car doesn't do what I bought it to do, that I am not locked in there for the rest of eternity. It's not the same thing. And also, people can think my car is crap because you're not the one driving it. And that's okay, because those things don't affect me. And I am not going to sell a car based on something someone is saying, because we are normal thinking human beings, ideally. I think what I really struggle with is just, especially from leadership, there is so much support out there for Latter-day Saints. The most supportive demographic I have ever come across in my Mormondom has been ex-Mormons. It is a supportive, healthy space. And when I talk about anything that maybe I'm sort of personally experiencing, or, like those experiences at church, the Latter-day Saint community tell me how I should feel about it. The ex-Mormon community tell me that they know how much that hurts because they've experienced it, and they are not baying at us, telling us to leave. We have friends as Mormons from all different traditions throughout the world, who support and who. So this idea that the world is out to get us by giving us terrible advice to take us away from the church and things that are right, I have no testimony of that. That is not my experience. In fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is that President Nelson shares this kind of advice with a lot of other very harmful leaders. On the left is Jim Jones, who ran the People's Temple, who was one of the largest mass suicides in the Western Hemisphere's history. 1,000 people died in South America. And he said, Jim Jones says, quote, "Don't listen to those people out there. They are the enemy. The only truth you need is right here within our family." And if you compare that to Russell Nelson's advice or other very vicious cult leaders, there's a lot of these out there. There's a lot of quotes that Nuance Ho lined them all up. This is very similar advice to high demand, high pressure, and cult tactics, which is very alarming.
Yeah, I mean, it says everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very troubling, And the other thing about it is that if you think back to Joseph Smith, the LDS Church, Joseph Smith was a curious boy who questioned his religion and decided to do extensive research outside of his family and outside of everyone that he knew in search for the truth. Can I do that? LDS Church, no, you can't do that. No. So Joseph Smith, the entire religion was founded on trying to find truth through any means possible. But now, no, you can't find truth in any means possible. You can only find truth from the 0.01% of people who are on the covenant path, who are active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Your ability to gain new light and knowledge is extremely limited based on Russell M. Nelson's paradigm.
So I also think there is this inability to listen from the church because we have the answers. Now, it's not even just a church thing. It's what humans do. As soon as you have something to say, you've stopped listening because you're just waiting to tell them what you know or what your take is. And that's normal, but we want to be better than that. So to be a good listener, you have to really hear what someone's saying, and you have to, not just hand someone what you think is a nice parcel of answers and that's okay. The church isn't here to, or shouldn't be here to do that. When you are, there is no need to ask questions in the way that Joseph Smith did, because now the church has been restored and all the answers are already here. And so you should know that there's no need to want to do more. And of course, that is not human. Humanity asks questions. And it is, that's supposed to be one of those godlike traits. And to take that away from us is something that people will kick back against when they have opportunities to do so. And the difficulty is when you're kicking back against an organization, that's the depressing part of this.
Yeah. Now, one
Yeah.
person fixed the meme here of the counsel. It said, "Never take counsel from those who don't believe." Somebody fixed it for us, and I think it might be right up your alley, Jane. It says, "Never take counsel from people who protect child molesters." Is that too harsh?
Amen.
No, apparently that is not too harsh. Apparently, I thought that would be right up your alley. Now, the other thing that came up from the president from General Conference, which I think is very important, is President Nelson. He doubled down on the Joseph Fielding Smith teaching about telestial bodies. And I just want to play you this from Julia with Analyzing Mormonism, which has really become one of my favorite channels. She does such incredible sum ups here. Let me play this for you and get your reaction about President Nelson's counsel about telestial bodies. What is a telestial body? Let's find out.
Said this.
Your choices today will determine 3 things: where you will live throughout all eternity, the kind of body with which you will be resurrected, and those with whom you will live forever.
Some of you might have asked, what does he mean, the kind of body we're resurrected with? Aren't we all resurrected into perfect bodies? Which is a very reasonable conclusion as it is laid out in Mormon scriptures. In the Book of Mormon, in the Book of Alma, chapter 11, it reads,
"The spirit and the body shall be reunited again in its perfect form. Both limb and joint shall be restored to its proper frame, even as we are now at this time. Now this restoration shall come to all, both old and young, both bond and free, both male and female, both the wicked and the righteous. And even there shall not as much as a hair of their heads be lost, but everything shall be restored to its perfect frame as it is now."
However, according to past Mormon prophets, obtaining this perfect resurrected body is only for those who obtain the highest degree of the highest heaven, also known as the Celestial Kingdom. In his book, Doctrines of Salvation, Joseph Fielding Smith clarified the teachings of the Book of Mormon.
"In the resurrection there will be several classes of resurrected bodies, some celestial, some terrestrial, and some telestial, and some sons of perdition. I take it that men and women will, in these kingdoms, be just what the so-called Christian world expects us all to be, neither man nor woman, merely immortal beings having received the resurrection."
Additionally, in his book, Answers to Gospel Questions, Joseph Fielding Smith expounded further.
"Is not the sectarian world justified in their doctrine generally proclaimed that after the resurrection there will be neither male nor female sex? It is a logical conclusion for them to reach, and is apparently in full harmony with what the Lord has revealed regarding the kingdoms, into which evidently the vast majority of mankind is likely to go."
If we unwisely choose to live telestial laws now, we are choosing to be resurrected with a telestial body.
So we are to understand from Russell M. Nelson and Joseph Fielding Smith that the vast majority of mankind will be resurrected without genitalia. They will instead be more like Barbie and Ken.
I do not have a vagina, and he does not have a penis. We don't have genitals.
That's okay. Yeah. I have all the genitals.
Personally, I thought this teaching was abandoned because it shows that gender is indeed not eternal, which is a key foundation to the family of proclamation to the world and in the church's position on gay marriage.
So, Jane, what a giant mess here. But President Nelson seems to be doubling down on the long forgotten or rarely mentioned LDS doctrine, also known as the Telestial Kingdom smoothie, the TK smoothie, which means that you won't have any genitals in the afterlife if you don't pay tithing to the church, if you don't follow the covenant path, and if you don't sustain President Russell M. Nelson as the prophet and the only person authorized to engage in all of the keys. But, this is doctrine that was back in 1965, yes. And it's been long lost, forgotten. But President Nelson, he hasn't given up on these old doctrines that, if you don't live my law, if you don't pay my tithing, if you drink coffee, if you do anything that I don't want you to do, what did he say? Food addiction, gambling. If you have any issues in your life, then you won't be resurrected with a celestial body, which if you go back to old doctrine, it means that you won't have any genitals in the afterlife. I mean, this is some pretty far out stuff.
There is so much that you could dive into with this. I think it's a really exciting and interesting subject, and I really get a lot out of living in the question and not sort of having any answers. So this is not going to be necessarily helpful for anyone. Julia is incredible, isn't she? The part at the end where we're talking about gender not possibly gender maybe not being eternal because of the Ken and Barbie doll thing. So gender, what we have learned is that gender doesn't equal genitalia, that there is it's a much more complex picture. And I would love to be part of a church that's able to explore that and lean into that, because at some point either either gender is sort of eternally fluid and it is not constructed in the way that we see, people tend to think about it right now, predominantly, and we know there are problems with that male, female, even binary, non-binary sort of way of looking at gender. But what really excites me is that while we could potentially look at what do we think, is that really what the Lord has in mind for us? Because there's some things that we could pull apart with the scriptures there. There's also this aspect of it where it's possible that some bodies are, as a result of the fall, maybe are intersex, or are people who aren't born with the correct genitals, and that gets taken into account in the eternities. So we had a lot of people over at conference, a lot of our trans community were celebrating the fact that, oh, that means in the eternity, I don't have to pay for bottom surgery. It's going to happen. This is wonderful news. And, and I loved that they were able to reclaim that part of the conversation. I found that really inspiring, and I'd love to know what Russell M. Nelson thought if he ever got to see that meme. But the other more sinister side of it is that we have this real issue that we know happens over and over again, where children are being taught that if you don't fit in this demographic, then there is something wrong or sinful or incorrect about you, but it's okay, that it will be fixed in the next life. And when this life is so damn difficult, that's when the next life, and throwing yourself on God's mercy and trusting that your body at that point will align with how you see yourself, is much easier than throwing yourself in the mercy of this church. And that is horrific to me. So yeah, this is a message that can both spark suicidal thoughts and encourage those suicidal thoughts, but I think we have so many possibilities there. I think there could be fascinating discussions where we to lean into them.
Yeah. The last thing that I want to cover from the last general conference here before we wrap things up is the temple updates. They announced 20 temples. And, Jane, for us over here in the United States, there was no temples that were announced in Utah.
That's a shame. Did you not get a temple?
No, we didn't get a temple in Utah.
Scotland hasn't had one for like 3 bajillion years. So unlucky people. Welcome to our world.
Yeah, and this is a meme from the Lord of the Rings. Utah has no new temples. Utah needs no new temples. That's just a joke from the Lord of the Rings. And a couple of other memes, because I'm a big meme guy. When Utah say they don't get a temple, shut up about your temples. That seems to be you, Jane. That is
exactly me. That is me and every one of your damn ancestors. We are not happy.
It seems like I hit an accord with you.
Yes.
Yes. But Nemo, he brought this up, that when it comes to, you found this for us, church leadership has been asking members not to speak publicly about where the temples have been announced. Some people are letting the celestial cats out of the bag, Jane. Dear members of the Broken Arrow Stake, we join you in celebrating the announcement of the temple in Tulsa. We're humbled and grateful, but you need to know that you're not supposed to be talking about temples before they've been announced. We need to keep this as a big surprise, not to, take the legs out from Russell M. Nelson's temple announcements. What are your thoughts on this one, Jane?
In a lot of ways, I don't get it. And it's only because of this that I had looked at what was happening with Cody. And I think I kind of get it a little bit. So I don't know if this is news to Mormons. But everyone does not love temples in their area. And it's maybe it's just a UK thing. I don't know. When anyone wants to build a large building on an area, particularly that used to be full of green space, then people don't want to live next to it. People want to have that maintained, and having a large temple spire dominate the horizon. Just because Latter-day Saints love to see the temple, everyone doesn't. And so yeah, I would expect, and what we tend to see is when planning permission is sought for a temple, you will then find people who will oppose that. But it's in the same way as if I were to apply to have my home extended slightly. One or two of my neighbors probably would have a problem. Most wouldn't, but some would. So yeah, you're going to naturally see that opposition. So I'm guessing then this is something that was a lot more coordinated. But my understanding of the Cody situation is that the church were kind of behaving in a very bullying manner about that. This is what happens when you don't live in the bubble. I guess I kind of need it explained to me a little bit, like, what is so bad about people knowing? Because you have to tell people you're going to build a temple at some point, right? What is the plan there? Like when the diggers go in?
The plan is to not preempt President Nelson from his announcements, because that takes the spark out of General Conference. So some people, because the thing about it is that the temple committee inside of the church is very large, and they're bidding on properties, they're surveying the properties. When the church representatives come out to your area, people know when the church is going to be building these temples. And some people in Tulsa and other places have let the cat out of the bag to media, saying, we're getting a Mormon temple in our area. And the leadership in those the area presidencies have said, no, we don't want you to do that, because that takes the steam out of President Nelson's that takes the steam out of his hot air balloon. We'll just put it that way. But speaking of memes, a couple last memes here. This President Nelson announced 2000, he announced 20 temples in 2023. And I can only imagine that if he's still around in another 20 years, announcing another 200 temples. But hopefully most of those will be in Utah, Jane. That's what I'm hoping for.
Bloody screw the lot of you. This is outrageous. Yeah, still none in Scotland.
No, and when it comes to, this is from Scooby-Doo, we're building more temples. And then when you take the mask off, you got the membership crisis. So that's the thing, is General Conference, they didn't address the fact that membership in Scotland, in Ireland, in the United Kingdom, and across the entire world, membership is going down. And it's amusing to see this meme here that, it's all under the mask. When you pull it away, we never addressed the membership crisis, but we're sure building a lot more temples.
Well, see, you did that really politely. Like, everyone else is like, why do you have so many members that Scotland really needs a temple? It's like, well, no, they're still all leaving. But for people in Ireland, they have to travel overnight. This is not an easy, and they have to get a ferry. There's a big distance there. People in the very, very south of Scotland and the islands, yeah, I mean, we're talking about, this is not a convenient journey at all. So yeah, temple is needed for the members who are there. But realistically, yeah, there is no one to man this volume of temples, especially as there's a third one that's being constructed in Britain. The problem is, and I think, just to be totally fair, it actually would help in a lot of ways. It really boost the faith and the hearts of the members of the church. So it's not like it would be a totally vain proposition, because we have them on every doorstep, and that's why we don't have enough people to do it, to man temples. We don't have a lot of people to do it, but it definitely would help. It is a sticking plaster. The membership is still going down. But yeah, but at this rate, we're going to see one on the moon before we get one in Scotland. I'm just...
yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that. Now, Jane, what do you have planned going forward for 21st Century Saints and the Brit Vengers group there? And you're going to be talking about good girls and burlesque. What's going on with your what's going on?
Oh, okay, so much. So yeah, this is this Sunday night, and we have got some burlesque performers who I recently started taking classes with. I started doing some burlesque, and it is empowering. I've learned so much about shame, body confidence, modesty culture, and that girl there in the posters, actually, this isn't just a graphic, this is our incredible teacher. Her stage name is Poppy Chesty, and she and the girls are going to be with us to talk about some of the things that they have learned. We actually do our classes in a Catholic chapel hall, like the cultural hall in a Catholic church. That's where we're doing those classes. There's a crucifix on the back wall, and we are owning our bodies. So yeah, we're going to talk about that. The other really important thing that we're doing is we're continuing to work on safeguarding and all of the issues around that. We are still talking with victims. We're still collecting stories of people who have experiences that they would like to share with us and potentially speak with us about. You can find all of the information for that on the 21stcenturysaints.org website. We are really excited that this past few months we have seen the policies that we were part of working with so many others and trying to implement in the UK. Well, now they're here and they're teething problems. People are sort of trying to get their heads around these new systems, which is exactly what we would expect and also hope to see, because that's how we learn. So we've got some information on some of our videos about if you are implementing background checks in your ward, here is how to complete the form. We literally baby step you through that if you're a bishop or safeguarding specialist and you need any support. So the background checks information is starting to come back now from the first people in the United Kingdom to have those checks done. And it's a pretty exciting time. All of the training is just beginning to happen. So yeah, we're absolutely thrilled with the trajectory of how it's going. And we look forward to seeing this being rolled out across the world.
Well, we'll be looking at the Brit Vengers and the 21st Century Saints very closely. I want to thank you, Jane, so much for coming on to the Mormon News Roundup. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Davis. I've had a ball. Thanks. This has been such fun.
Thank you. I want to give a shout out to Weird Alma on bandcamp.com for this episode's music. And thank you so much for ruminating with me on the great and spacious beehive. And remember, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing. So long.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.